Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zeng. So this is another book that I picked up because the Women in Horror book group was reading it. I absolutely love the cover of this one, and I kind of assumed it was going to be a Gothic story because I thought Bat Eater was going to be like some kind of Gothic slang. Come to find out that this is a story that takes place in 2020 as COVID is rolling out. Cora Zeng is a half Chinese girl, and Bat Eater is part of the derogatory terms that were going on during that time as like anti-Asian sentiment was at its highest, and kind of like a lot less fun reason to be called Bat Eater. And that was the least of the surprises in store for me when I picked this book up. But the truth of the matter is this is a great little Gothic horror comedy where there were these intense moments of like uplifting joy, connection, and like even laugh out loud fun paired right next to like intense gore, horror, and depressing moments. To be clear, this book goes hard. I don't know that I ever got over the shock of that first chapter. This book is sharing something that's like really special and made me feel certain things I knew in my body in a way that hadn't like 100% connected for me before now. As is becoming traditional when I want to talk about a book that's sharing a perspective that I'm not necessarily part of or isn't necessarily part of my experience, I thought we'd talk about it from a Gothic perspective instead because I feel quite qualified to say whether or not this book is goth or not. On this channel, there are 9 main elements and it only takes 3 to qualify to become goth. And so you know, this is going to be a full spoiler review. I don't think we can talk about it without ruining a lot of the reveals. And going in blind, especially to that first chapter, had a lot of heavy impact for me. But starting with element number 1, horror. It's not a forced march of drudgery, but there is this lingering, ever-present sense of dread and anxiety. And it starts with something pretty mundane, like the fact that we're in 2020 COVID pandemic peak. That was an anxiety-inducing, uncertain time for everyone. I just had this sense of claustrophobia and terror from rip. Pair that with like the significant anti-Asian sentiment that was going on at the time, the fact that so many people were insisting on calling COVID the China virus, the fact that our character is half Chinese and most of the people she's associating with are Chinese or Asian, and she is getting like a lot of anti-Asian sentiment, a lot of racism thrown at her, a lot of hate crimes are going around. In fact, in chapter 1, she witnesses her sister being pushed into an oncoming subway train and getting beheaded specifically because she is Chinese. The last thing that person says is that her sister is a dirty bat eater and then disappears. They never catch him. So a few months later, she's now working as a crime scene cleaner with Harvey and Ife, who are both Chinese. And in fact, this was a Chinese drywall company that converted over into crime scene cleaning because there's no drywall work right now, but plenty of crime scenes happening. And all of them are recognizing that they're cleaning a disproportionate amount of like Asian women off of hallways and floors, and then they're finding a calling card of bats being like stuffed in the walls or the drains or painted on backsplashes, and they're realizing that they have a serial killer on their hands that the police are not chasing after. There's no publicity on. The cleaning crew tries to get the press involved, and the press say that they can't publish this story, and that becomes a whole mystery. So this group of people go ahead and take on the mystery themselves to see if they can get enough proof to sort of like force the papers to print something or maybe force the police to do their jobs. And all of this is horrific and terrible enough in that kind of like mundane, dread, grindy, wear you down kind of way, which also they're worried about getting COVID this whole time too because it's 2020, so there's like all these masking procedures and sterilization and sanitation stuff, and they're going in and out of all these places. But on top of that, it's also Ghost Month, and Cora's sister Delilah has come back as the Hungry Dead and is haunting Cora and could do real damage to Cora and her friends if they don't find a way to like sort of appease her spirit. Not to mention that Cora's sister Delilah is now suffering further in the afterlife as a member of the Hungry Dead that's like literally starving. And that kind of rolls me into character is king. You know, Baker does such a great job making these quirky, infinitely lovable, very human kind of characters. Cora is like anxious and neurotic and uncertain. Delilah, for the little bit of time we get her in chapter 1, and then the way we see her in flashbacks is like a little self-absorbed, but also a little new age zen, it'll kind of work out kind of girl who sort of like had anchored Cora until her death. Harvey and Ife each have their own little quirky stories, a detailed out backstory that we get. All of them are characters that you kind of connect with and love and root for and feel like unique and human and feel like you kind of know, want good things for, and really want to go on this journey and really want them to come out like successful and victorious at the end. Between Cora, Ife, and Harvey, I still don't know who I'd like to hang out with more. I kind of think I want to hang out with all three of them all the time. I'm leaning a little bit towards Ife because Ife is always the one suggesting different places for them to eat, and I love food. Like, I just want Ife to take me around Chinatown to all the hot spots to eat. But also, I know myself, I love horror stories, I love horror things. There's part of me that feels like I would just geek out so much with Harvey and talk about like all of these different kind of like niche horror movie things and like practical effects and stuff. And when it comes to Cora, I just really empathize with her anxiety and like with her struggles of feeling like she's the odd person out and not really fitting in. I love how uncertain she is in social situations and how quickly she is to like quiet down, conform, become meek and small. Like, these are all challenges that I have in my own life that make me think that we could like be buddies together. And of course, because we are following Cora and like her experiencing her sister's violent death and then coming to terms with maybe her being haunted by her sister a few months down the line and trying to figure out what she can do to put her sister's soul at peace. Not to mention like survive this serial killer who's killing random Asian women. This is really only a story that this group of characters could go on together. Rolling me into number 3, more poetic prose. There is so many lines in this story that like I stopped and highlighted or that I just stopped to admire the beauty of. It's a really well constructed story. It ties so many things together so seamlessly. It's a beautiful lyrical kind of narrative. It does some amazing things with like metaphor and transforming from one kind of imagery to another imagery. I don't know that I would qualify it as experimental, but definitely as poetic. Rolling me into part number 4, elements of loneliness and longing. Cora is half white and half Chinese, and she has sort of been abandoned by both parties at this point in her life. Her white mother has moved on into a cult that Cora is not part of and I guess hasn't ever lived at, and her father decided that America was too much and moved back to China without her. So she's sort of being shuttled between her white auntie and her Chinese auntie. The only person that she ever really had as a constant in her life was Delilah, who had said that like sisters are always there for each other and always will be there for each other whether or not they ever like each other, which Cora really took to heart. She like followed this girl to college, stuck to the same major as her, moved into the apartment with her. I think she was gonna live with Delilah forever. But as you know, in chapter 1, Delilah gets beheaded in front of her, so Cora is completely unmoored from anything that she knew beforehand. And then she is further sort of like isolated because she's experiencing this like haunting from the hungry dead and she can't talk to anyone about it because Cora has been struggling with mental health issues her whole life and has been involuntarily committed at least once by her aunts. Unclear to me if she was involuntarily committed after Delilah's death, before Delilah's death, both of those times. But because she knows being weird, seeing something odd or unusual, or doing something odd and unusual gets her committed involuntarily and she does not want to go back. She does everything she can to appear normal, to appear like everything is fine on the surface, and that includes hiding like this experience she's having with the hungry dead. Maybe no one will believe her about these hauntings, and if that's the case, she does not want to go back. She'd rather just suffer with the oddness of it. Eventually, all of these hauntings get so bad that Cora comes to a place where she reaches out to her coworker Ife about the experience, and Ife and Harvey Harvey really come together to try and help Cora solve this issue she's having. And also the three of them like further bond when they all acknowledge that there's a serial killer killing Asian women and they're the only ones who seem interested in doing anything about it. It creates this really great found family dynamic. We get to learn so much about all three of their experiences, their traumas, their different life situations. Makes it even worse when horrible things start happening within the friend group. And I won't get into detail with it, but just know that it is sad. A rough time in this story. And eventually everything comes to a head to a point where Cora has to call for help, and she ends up calling her auntie Zeng, who is there for her and is like a strong pillar that lets Cora go out and sort of solve some of these problems for herself. And I thought that was sort of like a beautiful moment and a way to end this element of loneliness and longing on like sort of a happy note. It's like she's been fighting for a place somewhere in society, and eventually the Chinese half of her culture like embraces her and welcomes her into the fold and kind of like welcomes her home. Which moves us into number 5, elements of human mortality. Again, the hungry ghosts are kind of like the least of it here. Certainly suffering in the afterlife after having some kind of violent or sudden death is not great. And being forgotten by your family and therefore them not feeding you and helping you move on to the next life, also not awesome. But really at the core of this story is Cora trying to come to terms with Delilah's violent and sudden death. And there's a lot for her to consider. There's like this whole looming element of like the fact that they never catch the killer. And then like her aunt on her mom's side wants her to forgive the killer because that's like the Christian thing to do and they'd all get Christian points for it. But like Cora can't forgive this man who did this awful hateful thing. And what kind of person does that make Cora that she can't forgive him? What kind of person would it make Cora if she could forgive him or that she even wanted to try to forgive him? And then she's grappling with the idea that Delilah is completely gone because before the hungry ghosts show up on the scene, it seems very much like Cora is an atheist and anything that was ever her sister is long since gone and decayed. And she's like sort of trying to do the same thing to all of her memories of Delilah, putting them all into like this box and like erasing them or not thinking about them. In some ways, Delilah's mother has helped with this because she's pretty much taken everything that belongs from Delilah out of the apartment. Cora was able to like hide a couple keepsakes, but just generally speaking, she was allowed nothing of her sister to remain with her. Cora is struggling because her sister had promised they would always be together. There was no choice in it. It just was how it would be forever. And Delilah is not there anymore for Cora. And in some ways, Cora needs her more than she ever has before. So then when the hungry ghost comes around and Cora assumes that this is Delilah, in some ways we could read this as Delilah fulfilling her promise that she will always be with Cora. The two of them will always be together no matter the circumstances. Which means that Cora might not want to get rid of Delilah's hungry ghost, and maybe her attempt to do so could be seen as a rejection of their sisterhood, as her pushing her sister away, which is the last thing Cora's ever wanted to do. But at the same time, does she want to force Delilah to stay around if it causes great suffering to her? Like, these are all moral quandaries, all aspects of togetherness, bonding, life and death that Cora kind of has to like figure out for herself and do so in a pretty timely fashion. And like in a roundabout way, it sort of asks us like, how much can the dead be there for the living? How alive are the dead within our own memories? What do the living owe the dead? How do we feed these dead or remember them? And what place do the dead still have in our lives after they've passed? All of which rolls me into the supernatural element. This is a story that literally has the hungry dead ghosts haunting the living. It starts off with like some simple tangible things like Cora is missing fruits and vegetables the hungry dead are eating, and then she finds like a bite mark in her couch. It escalates a little bit into her seeing like footsteps and dust and stuff like that. She can hear them talking to her. She can even feel them like touching her or pulling her. But I mean, it culminates into this like really horrific scene where one of the hungry dead consumes two living people. and like the viscera is all that's left of them, and the cleanup crew has to clean it up so they don't get blamed for these deaths. There's really no question about whether or not there is a supernatural element involved, and the story goes to like some pretty graphic extremes to make it clear these dead are real and can impact you. Which rolls me into questioning a character's mental health and mental reality. Even before we know that Cora has been involuntarily committed before, she is obviously sort of like an anxious person, maybe someone with OCD, maybe someone with some other kind of like issue. She seems very much on a hair trigger. And she seems very self-aware of the fact that other people see her as weird or odd or not fitting in. We get this story from Cora's perspective, so like I never personally ever questioned whether what she was seeing was real or not, so it wasn't giving me that questioning mental health from that aspect, but it was giving me some like really interesting questions about how we handle people who aren't mentally well, because Cora withholds a lot of information from everyone around her because she's afraid that they'll see her as crazy or disbelieve her. And there has to be space where people feel comfortable coming to you and talking to you about things that have upset them or things that they believe are happening to them. Because if they don't talk to you about it, you have no way of knowing until it's way too late and like something awful has happened. Or like in the case of this story, you don't know that hungry dead are haunting Cora until the hungry dead have like consumed some other human beings and all of her surrounding friends who are helping her are dead. Like this could have ended very differently if she had just talked to Auntie Zeng from the beginning. And I don't blame Cora for this. Cora has very valid fears and concerns and no way to know how Auntie Zeng will respond. I do think it's like an interesting take on the mental health perspective because the characters around Cora are obviously questioning her sanity like all the time, whether or not to believe her, and often it takes like an actual in-person experience for them to be on board with her. Even though the reader is with Cora the whole time, other characters are questioning her all the time, and these are the people who are empowered to like have Cora committed, to see more harm done to her, or to be able to help her. It's like a unique tension where you're almost like wishing the ghosts would come out and hurt other people just so that Cora could be validated. Which rolls us into making use of local folklore, superstition, and myth. We do explore quite a bit of Chinese superstition here, working off of the story of the hungry ghosts, and we're in Ghost Month. And there's like some other superstitions and traditions that happen during that time to like ward off evil spirits, help people move over to the other side. I think we use all of that in an interesting way where we do lots of showing and not so much telling. I still don't really 100% understand all the intricacies of Ghost Month. I came in not knowing about it. This was my first exposure. It gave me enough that I understood what was going on in the story, and it certainly gave me some points where I could follow up on if this is something I wanted to learn more about in my own personal time. I also think they did a good job like incorporating Christianity and the white person's God into the story too, characterizing the church and how it welcomes everyone, but makes it more than clear that welcoming Cora in is a burden and is alienating other people, and it's costing the church something. And the church wants her to be like thankful or extra religious or some other bullshit as a result. I know someone in the comments is going to be like, not all Christians are like that, and you're right. But here's the thing, if you stop for 5 seconds, you're going to be able to think of at least 2 people who are self-righteous and racist and demanding assholes and are very Christian. And if you can't think of at least 2 people off the top of your head who are like that, chances are that you're one of those people. And I would really urge people like to look within themselves and within their own faiths if they happen to be Christian, and sort of ask like why these people exist, why these relationships exist, maybe what can they do to change that if they're not happy with that characterization. If God made people in his image, then this God is also racist. Like I like that sort of connective tissue that's there. It's not super in your face, it's not as direct as I just phrased it, but it's definitely the implied effect, at least to me. Which rolls me into number 9, a strong sense of place. We're here in New York City and it's flavored that way. Like the way they go from place to place, the hustle and bustle of the city, the fact that this is happening during COVID and that creates these unique pockets in this sort of way. I liked all of those little details. It felt like we were in New York City. It felt like this was a story that could happen only in New York City. I've only ever visited New York City. I've never lived there for an extended period of time, and I've also also like heard a lot of stories from when my mom was in New York City. And there's like a soul and a sense of place about New York where it is both like deeply rooted and personal and like all these little individual things, and super impersonal and doesn't care about anyone or anything. This story did a great job capturing that essence. A perfect little capsule where the police don't care about the Asian serial killer, but at the same time we have all these little Chinatown communities that are connected and sort of coexisting just fine. It was a beautiful little story. I think it showed both the best and the worst there is in New York as far as like a mixing pot goes and like your ability to live diversely. So that's gonna wrap me up into the conclusion. Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zeng has 9 out of 9 of these Gothic points, and it is like a fast-paced, thrilling sort of story that's got like a lot of bittersweet elements, joy, laughter, upbeat moments, as well as like extreme, intense, graphic horror. And if you're looking for something with those highs and those lows, you're looking for something that goes hard, drives, and pulls no punches, this is the book for you. It is excellently written. It's really a beautiful story. Now is a decent time to start reflecting on 2020 and sort of like seeing what was going on there, like with enough hindsight where it's not too painful or difficult. But I want you guys to talk to me in those comments down below. Have you read this book? And if so, what did you think about it? And if you've got this far in the video, our secret emoji is a bat. And as always, keep reading.